Well, let me segue in on what you're saying about purpose. And in the academic world, they call, or in the philosophical world, they call it a teleological approach. Teeth is for chewing, eyes are for seeing. You mentioned the chairs. Chairs were made for a purpose to sit in. If we think that we were created, and there's a purpose behind who we are, we need to find out who we are. Let me appeal to nature, and I'll try to make it really short. And this is to Axel in terms of, the wife, if she proposes to me, or if she gets a better job, and should I move or not move? Should we talk about it or what have you? What would that do to me in terms of my self-identity or my feelings about myself? Okay, or who should stay home and take care of the baby? And I know that in today's world, a lot of men do that. But when you think of a woman being a woman, feminine, in terms of emotionally, in terms of a point of view, even physically, nature has made her that she is the first provider of food. What the baby needs, milk, and men do not have, they don't grow.
Men can't even carry the fetus.
Okay, that's another good point. And so I kind of really want to capitalize a little bit on what you're saying about purpose, because if we just kind of go along, so, well, anything do it doesn't matter, what have you, and we fail to look at the great, grand scheme of things. A woman is physically made in a way to, like she carries the baby for 9 months. There's a bonding process. Baby's born, they hold the baby, they can feed the baby. A man can't feed the baby, not naturally, he can hold a bottle as time goes on. So a woman may be a little bit more, it's not a matter, I think that men and women should complement each other, as opposed to, be competitive or what have you. Here's one half and the other half coming together, and together we make a better whole or a better one than just we don't know. So back to what you're saying, finding our purpose. A man may be more adept to be able to be, work or a little bit more hard or what have you than a woman. And I think both personalities need to impact the child. The mom personality or the feminine personality or characteristics need to impact the child, but also the dad's or the male characteristics need to impact the child. Then hopefully the child comes out emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise, maybe self-identity, a whole lot more balanced than, let me shoot myself at age 16, let me try drugs, I don't know who I am, and what have you. So there's an order to things, and I think you're absolutely right. That's a big one. What's your purpose? And even if you don't know, let's look at nature. Maybe nature can give us a little hint, like, oh no, you're a girl. Look at you, or you're a guy. And the way you think, the way you are, that's kind of the way you should be. Yeah.
You about to open up a whole
go there.
I was like, oh man, is this going to be awkward for the rest of the day if I go there?
I did want to touch on one thing. When we talked about, I talked about, getting married very early or, 3 months, 6 months. Now, the divorce rate, somewhere around, 50%? Something like that?
There you go.
So, a little better than 50%.
In the church community.
Would you say a part of that is because people don't get to know each other and people don't get that time to really peel back the layers of who Gabe or who John or who Walter is? And go ahead.
So I think, just real quick, I think with that, to me, my little tidbit on that is that we view our perspective of marriage has kind of changed. To me, it went from being married for a life to wedding. Let's let the wedding be the thing. Let's spend all this money on the wedding. And to me, that appeals to more emotions, right? You want this big glamorous thing because women feel not to argue their point. They say things like this: I'm gonna have my time. I'm gonna be the queen for this day. And I start wondering, how come you're not the queen all your life?
Yeah.
How come you're not the queen every day? Why this one wedding day you gotta be, now you're the queen, after that you're no longer a queen? So I just think that society, culture has made wedding and made the idea of marriage, because think about in Hollywood, people get married and divorced all the time. The idea of being married is a great, grandiose thing. So people jump into it and it's like that high for that second. Right. Then after it's the reality of being married, it's hard work.
Right. And that's my whole logic behind
being together for
a while and really getting to know that person.
But let me add this too. You know, back to you. You're retiring now, 20 years in the military, and when you were in the military, there was no question in your mind who your supervisor was and what his or her job was, and who you were and what your job or what have you is. So once again, back to your idea of purpose. You get married, and if it's clear, and let me go back to the division of labor. If it's clear that here's who I am in this relationship, here's what you can expect from me. People get married, are you saying the glamour is getting married and then two people get together? Oh, we don't know like, who does what, when, how, you know, you do it this time, I do it the next time, whatever. And because of the not being clear on your role, how you fit into that relationship, then yeah, that can create arguments and chaos and confusion and anger. And then of course, as you said, over 50% divorce because we got married. And yeah, I marry you, you're a woman, or you're a man, I marry you. But then, as you saying, it's a lot of hard work in marriage. You said that, okay, yeah, I took you on the weekend, and now we're married. Like, you asked me, what's all this time that you're supposed to have to me? But once again, I think if we're clear, in any endeavor, we're clear on who we are, what purpose we serve, our identity, and how we fit in that relationship. Sure, there'll be some wrinkles here and there, some working things out, but if I know that part of my job, or the big part of my job, I'm the breadwinner, I'm supposed to be a head of the family, whatever that means, head of the family, I'm supposed to protect my wife and children, that's part of my job, as opposed to, oh, I hear something, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I hear something scuffling out there, you know, you get up and go into see what that is, check that out. As opposed to like, I'm the guy, let me get up and let me face whoever. So I just kind of wanted to add that little part.
I
did. Okay, I just want to.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
That was an excellent point about the divorce because that kind of shows the other side of that coin with them knowing each other. So Ty, we're going to go to you. If you got anything else to say on this particular thing, we'll go to you, and then we'll move from this point.
Back to Fatherhood.
I just want to say quickly about the marriage day and that the theory of the woman is your day. Like, we hear that a lot. And I even said that to Pam, I remember, and shout out to my wife. So I told her, I said, Pam, it's your day. And when she told me, and I thought it was really cool, she was like, oh no, it's our day. And it kind of like put me in a pause.
Kudos.
Yeah, you did a great job, sir. So it made me pause and was like, yeah, it really is, because this is the beginning of our relationship, right? So there's that foundation. So like you said, she's the queen, I'm the king, right? And the other thing too, I know of like one of my buddies, he had that philosophy of it's your day, and she took hold of that it's her day, and she was so stressed out during that, but she was so stressed out from doing all the organization and things of that nature. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so the other thing too about our day, what I really dug about Pam, and shout out to my baby Pam, is she is fiscally responsible. She like, we didn't want to break the bank.
There you go.
Yes.
On the
for
wedding.
that one day. Like, I know, and I'm gonna say this last thing, and I know you want to move on, but I know of someone who they invested about $50,000 in the wedding. They divorced, and he was still making payments
on that
wedding. So you know what I mean. So
Not about that one.
Yeah, so the investment is the marriage, you know.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, that's the premarital
the wedding
counseling and things like that. The wedding day, it should be special, but you shouldn't have to.
Don't break the bank. Don't go into debt for that.
Yeah. So
Axel, anything?
Yeah, it was just I was going to tie into the divorce piece and the courting piece because we've talked about that in roles. So a couple of things, right? So I had actually been in relationships. I had girlfriends before I had met Adina.
What?
And they were probably, but when we talk about like a time horizon, right? So I had been with them, maybe 2 years, another one 3 years, another one probably 3 years, 2 years in there. And at the end of it, we realized we weren't necessarily meant for each other for the rest of our lives, right? And then in my relationship with Adina, we were long distance, right? Not necessarily dissimilar from you. So
Maybe
when we're
that works,
together,
long distance.
it's like a honeymoon. It's not truly what it means it doesn't, our experiences when we're together doesn't reflect what it would be like if we were married.
There you go.
Right? And so it took us time to figure that out. Like when you talk about, you know, you had like an ideology, and your ideology matched with your wife's.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so Adina's ideology doesn't necessarily match with mine, right? So it took the jury's still out on me, right? But and so it took her time, and I think it's good that she took the time to figure out whether or not, you know, committing to somebody for the rest of her life, even though they might view the world differently, would be something that would work for her, especially when you talk about kids and what that will look like. Because I think, you know, we'll work together. I mean, it's sort of the love is there, and we'll compromise on things. But it's being comfortable in your partner that you're willing to bring another life into this world.
There you go.
And being in that space is where I really want to make sure I'm making the right decision.
I think to your point, I look at that as just being responsible. You know, you're being responsible, especially when it comes to bringing a child into the world. Because a lot of people think automatically when you get married, all right, where's the kids?
Yeah.
You got the kids yet? Where's the kids?
Where's my grandchildren?
Like, hey, we talked about this. We want to agree, you know, about children, bringing children to the world. And I mean, I wouldn't say that there's a particular time, but I think that there's a season in your life where you should prepare for children and really talk about, you know, having kids. So kudos to you and Adina, kudos to you and Pam, kudos to you, Dad, and kudos to you. So I want to, go ahead.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
I know you want to move on.
Go ahead.
All right. So when you was talking about the nail in the head, the woman complaining, I got to go back there because I had it on my mind. Sometimes I really think that you know, women, you know, men, I think we're hardwired to be problem solvers.
Hardwired.
You know, we're hardwired. You know, you hear something in your ears, and my first reaction is, well, you know, I'm trying to figure out how to rationalize and then get from A to Z and actually put this thing to rest or fix it or whatever. But sometimes I think women may be complaining, and you say, but the nail, and they're just like, you know, and they just want to be heard. Yeah. They don't want you to say anything. They don't want you to solve their problem. Yeah. They just want to be heard, and you sit there, yes, and it'll be a good day.
That's the hardest thing for a man to do, though. Like, because we always, my wife does it all the time. Like, babe, let me solve this problem real quick. Right. If you only do this, it'll be solved. It'll make her more upset. Because, you don't listen. I just solved the problem.
Could I just say one thing? I just want to say one thing. Working in the field as a therapist.
Yeah.
So one thing what listening does and acknowledging the feelings does.
Yeah.
It makes her more open,
yeah.
Puts her at ease, makes her feel understood, and it puts you two in a position where you can articulate your perspective. And it's part of that problem solving piece.
There you go. Yeah.
But that initial approach of listening is powerful. And I feel you on that because sometimes I just want to go because I got the solution, but I know I have to be patient because if I'm not patient, my solution is just a brick wall. It's just bouncing right off of her because it's not the right timing.
You gotta let her come to the solution that you already knew about.
Sometimes you can walk away.
Like, girl, you
man, that's what you want. Good idea, boo.
All right, so I want to ask one more question because I know the time is well spent. So, Axel, I'll start with you. Sure. How has your father, you know, impacted your life?
Sure. So my mother and my father probably knew each other and were on and off probably 17 years, right? And elected to have a kid in their late 30s. And they met in New York. They both went to school in New York. My father Columbia, my mother Sarah Lawrence. But my mother lived in Boston and my father lived in New York. And so that, and then he got a job in DC, right? So DC is where he was going to be and Boston is where my mom was going to be. And so it's never been an issue of, you know, actually, you know, your father, I know exactly who my father is and he knows who I am. But he wasn't necessarily always around, right? And so when you talk about fatherhood, you know, he wasn't necessarily there for swim meets, right? He wasn't necessarily there to help me do my homework. And so, you know, I guess technically I lived in a single parent household with my mom. Nice. And so maybe she did take on roles that might be deemed fatherhood type roles, right? To console me or to give me advice on a girlfriend, right? Or give me guidance on how I should be as a male growing up in this world, right? And so I love my father. We know each. We talk. We engage. We debate. He's a smart guy, and we have the relationship that we have.
I think I think every episode I'm always gonna say shout out to the women out there. Women, without women stepping up, I would say, because and this is one of the reasons why I came up with this topic, this show of fatherhood, because I really think that the men, we've really taken a hit, as men, and we've really fallen, in my personal opinion, behind the curve. And now, the women had to step up. They had to play the roles and the positions that normally men probably would have played. And so I always give major kudos to women on fatherhood. And your mom, she did a very good job. Exceptional. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, sir.
In raising you, your dad wasn't there all the time. But what about you, Ty? How has your father impacted your life?
So my father, my parents in the late 70s, so they economically, they were in poverty, if you will.
Okay.
My dad was going to school for his psychology degree. And throughout most of my life, we were living in housing projects, apartments, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I always witnessed my father working really hard. He worked really long hours in the mental health field. He worked overtime. He'd come home late. So I saw the work ethic, working towards a goal. His goal was to move his family into a home. And then I recall when I was 13 years old, we finally moved into our first house. So I saw that climb from, if you will, poverty to middle class, upper middle class, like whatever the category, but moving into our own home. So I saw that work ethic. He also instilled the importance of God in my life. It was important that we went to church. We had to go to church every Sunday. Sometimes we didn't feel like going, but we had to go. As long as you under my roof, you got to go to church. And my father, he is very opinionated. So as I got older, and
you picked up on that too.
I try to be prayerful, so I'm not a bulldog. Right? That's my perspective. But yeah, so he like I said, he's very opinionated. So when I got older, you move off to college and you come back and you think you're grown and you have your own perspective. We started butting heads a little bit more. So then, it was in my mid to early 20s. I moved out on my own, things of that nature. But, overall, like I said, he taught me a lot of wonderful principles of work ethic, working hard for a goal, God first. So those are some of the principles.
I want to piggyback off something you said, and I know we were well past the time, but you said you and your dad started butting heads at a certain point. Do you think that's, and this is for anybody, do you think that's innate in guys? And I clarify what I'm saying. It's kind of like in the animal kingdom, the lions. Once the young male lions get to a certain point, that father lion kicks them out. Like, hey, you're gonna be nomads now. And I see that even in like with humans. You get to a certain point, and the dad and son, for some reason, butt heads. My mind keeps going back to the scripture. A man leaves his mother and father.
Could I speak to that real quick, like in a couple of sentences? To your point, I think that's a natural progression. It's not necessarily a negative thing that you're coming into your own identity as a man. He's been a man for many years, and you may have different perspectives and things of that nature. I believe it's a natural course for you to be encouraged to be independent. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of how I see it.
I find it funny too that it never said for the woman to leave. On that note, we're gonna wrap this one up. I knew you.
If my dad was living today, he would be 103 years old.
Wow.
So he was born back in 1916. And father-son relationship back then, my dad, of course, manual labor, etc. So we kind of rarely saw him. And there was a sort of a big class difference, like, that's your dad. We didn't hold conversations, kind of like he's the king, he's going to go and do this and do that. And, yes, sir. And if you didn't, it wasn't like you could call 911 and talk about abuse. In fact, back then it was kind of like a good father would tear you. Well, use the word tear you up, but they would really discipline you. Not only that, any older person, your uncle, your aunt, they all had kind of the rule over kids that they would, you could not get what they call, like stay in your place. I'm grown. I'm a man. You can't sit in my presence and have a conversation with me. That's the way I kind of grew up. So I idolized my dad. I feel really good about him when in retrospect, he worked really hard. He took care of his family and he was committed to that. I don't know my mother. She passed away when I was too young to know her. But there were like 10 of us, and Dad was able to keep us together and whatever. So I really, really admired him. But yes, back then, there wasn't this father-son relationship. There was a relationship, but it was kind of like, I'm up here, you down here. You do what I say. You don't question me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to add that little part in there.
Right. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anybody else got anything? If we good?
Well, yeah, I'll say my last piece. As far as us growing up, what I learned from Dad, was work ethic. Working towards a purpose. Being committed. Community service, church service, God. Family structure. I think that's probably one of the top tiers. Family structure and how to. Family almost to me is like a business. You set up certain key things, to happen in a certain way, and as long as those things are happening, I think you can have a pretty successful family. Implement certain things. So that's some of just a small taste of what I learned from.
I would second everything you said. For me, indirectly, it's kind of like go for your dream. Whatever you put your mind to do, you can do it. And that's one thing I can say I pulled away indirectly by watching the example of you going for your dream. No matter how
Still going in.
Yeah, no matter what the age is, getting your doctorate degree, like all of this stuff is like, hey, you're never too old to complete maybe your purpose, maybe what's in you, maybe that drive that you were born with, to go forward in life and go for your dream and actually achieve it.
Well, part of what he said too, in terms of a son pulling away from their dad or their parent, because a lot of times parents want to live what they call it vicariously. I want to be a football star. I want to be this. So son, you're going to have to be, and the son wants to go a different way. And the dad kind of like, no, you're supposed to be, what I could not be and what have you. But in terms of independence and each person, developing their own identity, that's very important.
Yeah.
That sons, you pull away, not estranged, not in hostility. And good dads will hopefully come to that. Because see, dad is so much being in charge. The kids are a little odd, let me hold your hand. They're so ingrained in being in charge, protection, whatever, until sometimes they forget that, hey, this kid is 18 years old, or this kid is 30 or 35. They're not a kid anymore. They're grown. Support what they're doing to the best you can. So that's a transition for dads. And for some dads, it's kind of hard.
Right. I raised my hand. I'm still dealing with that transition. I can see me and my son kind of like almost getting to that point. Like, hey, son, it's time for you to go, man.
You're not watching this show. Turn it off.
But
It's a good thing.
yeah.
Because he has to survive. Like you said, the lion kicked the little one. Yeah, you got to stand on your own and follow your dream and develop yourself. You're not just an extension. To some extent, yes, you learn a lot from your parents, but you have to come into your own and be who you are.
I think it's natural, and I think that's the reason why I asked. I think it's a natural point where you get not in hostility, but just to kind of move away, because you gotta, create your own identity in who you are, and one day you have a wife and kids, and you're gonna take all the foundational things you got from your parents, and you're gonna express that.
Well, the lions don't play. You got to go. You're not gonna be at 35 years old. This is your room here. You don't have a job. You don't pay rent. Like who was it that said that as long as you're under my roof? That's the idea. Dad, you're under my roof, and then you're 35 years old. So that we have to help our kids be able to become independent. And it may be a little rough for them right then. They feel like, oh, you don't care, whatever. But as time goes on, they look back, they're happy about the discipline. Like you guys, I mean, like, I know y'all try to play tricks, have the bed and put a pillow in the bed and out the window. And one night, we walked in because their mom would always check.
We was watching Ferris
And we
Bueller.
realized that, okay, they think we are dumb. So we went and locked the door and put the window down so they had to come and knock on the door. What are you doing? But anyway, they came out really good.
We did do some long but we're gonna wrap this this portion up. I'm gonna dub this the Thanksgiving episode. You know, I got my whole family here, you know, from right to left. These are all my brothers, my dad. And so I'm just appreciative of family. And so y'all know how y'all can reach me. You know, my email's right here on the screen. And so if you want to be a part of fatherhood, hit me up. You know, don't be embarrassed or shy to do so. And we'll make it happen. We'll make it work. So I hope everybody got something from this Thanksgiving edition of Fatherhood. See you in the next one.